I thought maybe we could see if we could get you guys to tell some stories, have a little conversation. I was gonna try to get Mike here to help with that because he seems to be pretty good at remembering parts of stories to get the ball rolling.
We're trying to do this with the cobblestone, and I don't know how they're doing on doing it. They did it with a bunch of people, but they did it on CDs, I think, and you can't understand what people are saying.
Oh, the audio is not good.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't work very good.
Well, Brady and Mark bought me this fancy camera for Christmas, so it's supposed to be pretty good. He has all sorts of. He actually has a speaker, or not a speaker, a microphone that sometimes he takes. No, I was just thinking of some of the stories that I used to hear about you guys, like with the milking the cows and your dad and the wasn't he a sheep herder or something for a while?
Yeah, when he was young, he was up in the mountains being a sheep herder and reading books and stuff.
I don't remember him talking about that. I wish I'd gotten him to talk about some of the things that I'm interested in. You know, like apparently he hauled the load of freight from Columbus to Mystic Lake Camp while they were building up there.
A load of freight, like with a truck or something, or?
Oh no,
Horse and buggy.
Oh, really?
And I don't even know how many horses he had on it. You know, I'm assuming that it was probably 4 at least, and then might have been a 6-up.
Wow.
To get up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was looking for a job, so he just stayed up there and went to work for him up there.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, and
I wasn't there, I don't.
You weren't?
well, the only thing I remember about that was that he was talking about having been hit by lightning twice.
Oh.
And once, I think, was up in the Karl Gaustad homestead where they were living there after they moved from the Beaver Creek. And he just grabbed a hold of a fence and got it.
That.
You know, I mean, the fence is, if it hit any place, it went all the way down the line. He said it just knocked him out for a while.
So he grabbed the fence before he got hit, or after?
Well, when he grabbed the fence, he got it. When he, and you, if you're a rancher, how do you work with a fence instead of without grabbing?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you're always grabbing. And the other time he was up in Mystic, and they were probably moving big rocks. And the way rather than haul in a
Steam shovel?
No, a big tower lifting
Like
thing.
a crane type of thing?
They would just take a big, like a telephone pole, and mount it on control it with other cables, and then run a cable through a shiv up onto it, and then hook the cable onto a rock, and then have the engine that wound up the
like a winch type of thing.
pull it up, and then move rocks. You know, because they didn't have the same kind of big machinery.
Yeah.
And I just wished I had gotten him to talk more about that.
Yeah, he told me that when he was a sheep herder up in the mountains, I don't know who he was working for, but he says, I had a terrible time with reading because I run out of reading material.
Because didn't he speed read?
Yeah.
Well, before he did the speed reading, it did good, and then he said when I run out of books, I started reading slow, and he says then I couldn't get back into the speed reading.
Had to teach himself how to read slow again.
I remember him telling me about that.
Now, when you and I went to Billings that once to get that, when you helped me get that camper, we had driven by Lockwood area. Who was
Yeah.
it? Who was it that used to live there?
That used to live there?
Yeah, wasn't there a relative of Grandma's or somebody?
No, I don't think so.
Well, our mother had family that lived down in Billings on the south side.
Yeah, they had a,
Yeah, who is that?
The Fairburn families had
Yeah.
had it down there, and we would go down. You know, Mother would take us in the car. I kind of think I remember a little bit about going down and being down closer to the river on the south side.
yeah.
But
And
it's
wasn't there some kind of bird or something on her porch? You know, molded.
Like a totem type of thing?
I don't know. I remember a porch like that, and then of course I think I have memories of a porch out at Andy's on
Yeah.
the ranch out there.
Was it
But
just a residence, or did they have a little farm out there? Or
Well, if you know
In
how
Billings,
yeah,
they had a truck farm.
a truck farm?
Yeah. Vegetables and
Oh, okay.
stuff.
Yeah, if you know anything about the south side, wasn't row houses, rows of houses. It was
Just here and there.
somebody had this much, and it was like 10 acres, or people.
But it was down on the river bottom, so
Well,
it was good.
down
good
on
soil.
the south side, and if you get down in there now, there's still places that are a little bit like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then they had some close friends, the Barnes family, Murty Barnes. And,
Oh, right. That's who I was trying to think of her name.
Yeah.
What was it? Gertie?
Murdy.
Murdy Barnes.
And I can't
They
remember.
lived near there, or
Well, I think they lived down on the south side too,
Mm.
down there where the truck farm was. But Mother talked about,
so they were some cousins or aunt and uncle or
yeah,
something.
either that or a very close family.
There were
friends.
several parts of the Fairburn family, and of course, see, Mother lived down there when she was born in Billings, and so she lived there.
Yeah.
But then when her father died,
The hired man moved her to Oregon.
yeah.
Moved Grandma to Oregon?
Well, they were married, and
Oh.
they married what we call Grandma Bell, Mother's mother. Yeah. And
Why did I think Grandma's mother was Goldie?
Goldie Bell.
It was Goldie Bell.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, okay, Goldie Bell married a Fairburn.
No, she was married originally at Fairburn. Mother's a Fairburn.
Yeah.
And
Then when he died,
she married
then she-
somebody named Bell
she married a Bell and moved to
and
Oregon.
moved to Oregon.
Okay.
In the
And
gold field.
And how old was Grandma then? So a kid or?
I think-
Mother was 6 when he died, I
I
think,
think 7.
6 or 7.
7.
But then it didn't happen all right away, and
It was
so Mother
very short
moved to
time.
Oregon with them,
Yeah.
and things didn't work out there. So she moved back here.
Well, when she got to high school age, there was no high school there.
Was
Oh.
that what it was?
Yeah.
And he was a gold miner? Is that what you said?
He wanted
why he
to
went to
in the
Oregon?
gold fields and make his living mining, and then her dad's brother was the sheriff in Columbus, Stillwater County, and she moved and went to school in Columbus. Was valedictorian.
So she went-
No,
she
wait a
went and
minute,
lived
wait a
with her
minute.
uncle?
It wasn't her. The guy that was sheriff was Fellows.
Ed Fellows.
Ed
Okay,
Fellows.
yep, I recognize that name.
Okay, and he was married to Auntie Fellows, who was a sister to Orrin
Her dad, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Fairburn.
Okay, so she went and lived with her aunt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in
And uncle.
in
Annie.
Columbus.
Yeah.
Auntie.
In Columbus.
Okay.
in Columbus, and she went there for at least 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, a little bit like.
So that explains why Auntie was such a close
Oh yeah,
part
Yeah.
of the
she
family.
was-
She helped
And-
raise
and-
Grandma.
And somehow the sheriff was set up was there were two people that thought they should be sheriff, and they had made a deal that for one
Undersheriff.
for one election, one of them would be sheriff, and then they
Oh,
would
they just
then-
take
then
turns.
Oh,
They would convert, and the other guy would. Then the sheriff would convert to deputy.
So in this Fellows was one of those.
Yeah, the Fellows was
Blankenship was the other guy.
Fellows
Uh-huh.
was the sheriff first, but then when they converted, the other guy wouldn't hire Fellows. County government.
No quid pro quo there. Huh?
But see, the Fellows had been I think a marshal, a federal marshal in Helena, and Auntie remembers seeing Charlie Russell up there.
Oh really?
Yeah, you know, I mean, he
Yeah.
lived around there,
Yeah.
and somehow Auntie and Ed must have had some connection to Montana government, because when they came down here and bought the ranch out on the Stillwater, out on the end of Fellows Lane, and then Ed Fellows died, and Auntie was a widow, and somehow she was given the job of
Liquor store.
being the liquor store.
Oh, really?
And in those days, the liquor store was all liquor was sold by the state government.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the liquor store was a state government
Run
ownership.
entity. Yeah.
But she somehow had the political
Affiliation.
to stay there as long as she was able to work.
In Columbus.
Oh, in
Not
Absorkee.
Absorkee.
Oh, in Absorkee. Okay.
Right where the IGA store is, there used to be a small part of the store off, facing it to the right, which would be to the north.
To it faces onto the. Well, actually, it was on the Grove Street side.
Yeah. Well, the door went in
Kind of
In between them.
Yeah.
Kind of.
halfway. Yeah.
And I think originally that building had been set up as a bank. And that part of it had been a bank. And the grocery store, you could go in from.
So when all this was happening, where was Grandma's mom? Still in Oregon?
In Oregon.
She stayed in
Yeah.
Oregon with her second husband.
And see, there was Mother and Sybil.
Right.
And then they had, I think, at least 2 boys, maybe 3.
Yeah, two.
2 boys.
Art.
They were Bells.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So half brothers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
half brothers. Yeah.
But was Sybil a half sister?
No.
She
She
was
was a full sister.
a full sister. Yeah,
And she was she older?
younger.
She was younger. Okay.
So she
She
fit into
stayed.
the
She stayed
fit into the new
in the new family better
family
than
better
Grandma
than-
did.
yeah.
And I don't know how she ended, where she ended up when Mother came back to Columbus. I don't know I don't think, she never did come back to Montana to go to school or anything. I don't know where she went.
So your great grandmother never came back to Montana. She stayed in Oregon.
Oh, she came and visited.
She
Right.
came and visited a couple.
I think when some of children were born,
Yeah.
she came and helped out.
So, Mom, tell the story again about. I have a favorite story that you tell about you and Auntie when you were little and she was living in the little house, right? Didn't you say Auntie was living in the little
Oh, no.
house?
No,
No.
no. She was living down.
that was Grandma Gaustad that lived in the little
Oh,
house.
okay. But I think the story you told was of Auntie. You'd gotten in a little fight about something or another.
No, it was
That was Grandma? Oh, okay. I got the house right. I got the wrong
Yeah, it was Grandma.
person. So what was that?
Yeah, 'cause she had, I can't remember what it was, but she was mad at me.
I think it was flower bed or something like that, I thought.
And, yeah, it could be.
Picking her flowers or something, maybe.
Yeah. And anyway, I just looked at her and said, Grandma, you go to your house and I'll go to mine.
Straighten that out.
And she thought that was great. She thought I was,
She was a Gaustad then.
yeah. Yeah.
Good. You know, Grandma and Aunt Tora were sisters. The Gaustad.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know much about the Gaustad.
Okay, so there's two Gaustad families.
Louise.
Yeah,
Right.
there's two Gaustad families.
Okay.
Peter and Karl married Mary and Tora.
Oh my.
Sisters.
Oh, brothers married sisters?
Right, that's where
Yeah.
the double
Yeah.
cousins come
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
And Grandma had a homestead out on Beaver Creek.
Grandma Mary.
Mary.
Gusted.
Yeah.
Okay. And she was a Brown originally,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Just to
I think it was
confuse
Braun.
Bruin, yeah.
Yeah, but they
Spelled, yeah, they changed it or
they,
something.
they
At Ellis
accepted
Island.
Brown as the
So it was Mary and Carl,
No,
Mary and Peter,
yeah.
and
Mary
Carl
Peter
and Tora. Okay.
And the other family had 5 children. 1 boy and 4 girls. And in our side there were 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls.
Oh, funny.
And they ranched. And so I'm sure that the girls got the opportunity to be ranch ladies. Ranch
Yeah.
women, you know. Yeah. And I think that they may have lived in the same house. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
Because out on Beaver Creek, I've got a record of Karl, Peter, and Mary selling an interest in, I think they had 3 homesteads. And I don't know if they did it in all of them, but somehow they, for $1, Karl and Tora got interest in that thing. But then they sold it back in 21 when Grandma and Grandpa sold those three homesteads out there. And then I think they moved out to the Karl Gaustad homestead, because I'm pretty sure Dad lived out there.
Yeah,
for,
he
for
lived
some
on
time.
the old Powers place
Yeah,
when it was Augustus, yeah.
yeah. So
Oh, as in
yeah,
where Brady and Lisa got married, that Powers
Yeah.
place?
yeah,
Oh,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. That's
Huh.
isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there was a house across the river is where the house was.
and
Okay.
I've in doing my research with with the old newspapers, I found an obituary for Lava Brown, who was Grandma Gaustad's mother,
Oh.
and she had a homestead out on Beaver Creek, near there. And Siebert has a homestead out there, so there was probably at least 5 and maybe 6 homesteads out there that.
Okay, so
Maybe.
what were the names of Peter and Mary's children?
Okay.
There's a
Oh,
test.
it's
So solving.
it's Julius,
Julius,
Uncle Joe,
Okay.
Dad, Marguerite, who she was married to Rathburn,
Okay.
Aunt Pearl,
Flanagan.
married to Flanagan,
And Aunt Louise.
and Aunt Louise, who
Okay.
married an Egan. And see, there's an Egan homestead out in that area too. I don't know that they ever worked together, but the Brown things must have somehow been. I mean, you all know enough about ranching. How long could you live on 160 acres?
Yeah.
Dry land.
Yeah,
With that many kids.
yeah, and so I can show you on my homestead maps, you know, what the 3 homesteads were that they, and then.
Well, and especially at that time, to work that much by yourself,
Yeah.
you got to have good neighbors.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So the odds are
Ranching
you're
in those
working
days,
together.
I mean, you had to have 5 kids at least,
Yeah.
and then people, several families with 5 kids had to be involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but if you you know, all this kind of works together. I'm trying to learn more about you know, how things really were.
Yeah.
And my homestead maps, you know, I've done it for the whole county. In so many cases, you can see one homestead, and then there's 3 or 4 of them around that are either the wife or the brother or the mother or something like that.
Because you had to have somebody else's name on it.
Well, yeah, well you had to have more than 160 acres.
Yep.
And even held when they doubled it to 320, you know. Particularly, you know, like on the land out north of Columbus, you know. I mean, you know,
It's
this
more like us.
yeah.
It's not lush river bottom. It's
and there aren't even good creek bottoms out
Yeah.
over there, you know. But you know, if you look at where Grandma's homestead is out there, it's kind of along the stream bottom, and the guy that owns it now is J.O. Miller, and he's been real nice about. He took us out and drove us around and showed
They
us.
lived that way. They lived there. They
Yeah.
lived there.
yeah.
He said his grandmother would drive back and forth up and down Beaver Creek, and she would say, "This is where the Woods homestead is. This is where Raleigh Dickerson's homestead is," and so he's got that all
Kind of
in
beat it into
in
him.
his head. And see, back in those days, they called that ranch where Dad was born the Monkey Ranch. And the best explanation for that is that somehow, in the translation of it, you know, about that time, most of the old cars, Ford cars, had a wrench in the car, and it was
To
called a
change
monkey.
tires
It
and
was a monkey wrench.
Yep.
And I think between that and somehow
The monkey wrench and the monkey ranch.
I think that's the best explanation that J.O. could come up
Oh,
with,
that's funny.
was that in the conversion from Norwegian to English and so forth, that everybody started talking about monkey wrenches and monkey ranches. and J.O. will now tell you that that's the monkey ranch.
Oh, that's funny.
And he could, by the time he took us out there were no buildings left. He could say, okay, the house was here, and you can see where the cellar was. And you can look at almost all of the ranches around. There's always a cellar.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was chicken coop down here, and then kind of down over the cliff is where the well was, down on
closer to the creek.
closer to the creek. But it's kind of interesting.
So the 5 siblings, you said one of them married a Flanagan. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
true.
And were there double cousins with the Flanagans too?
Well, no, not there, but you know, Morris Blakely is a cousin to us.
And you don't know him.
I know the name. I
Yeah.
do know
Okay.
the name.
Yeah.
His,
And she's
his
a-
mother was Clara.
Okay,
Clara,
right, I remember.
She
Which-
had a
that.
house right across
Who
from the
was
grade
a
school.
double cousin.
Okay.
She was like Aunt Louise, the youngest of the five. I'm sure.
Oh,
That's
so the
true.
double cousins were Peter and Karl marrying Mary and Tora. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's
That's
where
right,
the
yeah.
cousins.
But
came
then,
from.
so then there's this two families of Gaustads here, and only three boys. So the Gaustad gang kind of
Right.
filtered out. Our family is about the only one that produced Gaustads.
Yeah. Too many girls.
Yeah.
I know how that works. there are no more Swansons in our line.
And one time, Dad took me for a ride out to Beaver Creek, and I can remember exactly where we were, but I can't find it now.
Yep.
And we got out of the car, and I didn't think we went across the creek, but we went through the fence, and we started up this little draw, and I looked down, and there was a perfect bird point arrowhead.
Oh well.
And I said, wow, look at that. And he didn't even see it till I picked it up. And I just wish I had asked more about, because I was on Grandma's homestead then. I knew that. And I think Mary's got that arrowhead. When I came back, I was looking for arrowheads and nobody had them. And then all at once, here comes some arrowheads that Mary had. But there was in that stuff that she sent me was a arrowhead just shaped just like the one that I found, but it was made out of sandstone. And so I think she still got that. But it was, most arrowheads you find have the tip broken off or so. This was by a bird point, I mean it was like that. Most arrowheads are like this, but a
Okay.
bird, they call them a bird point, and they're
Broader.
shaped wider they don't have to penetrate so deep But, and I've driven out there many times, and I can remember in my mind where I found it, and it was kind of a draw, not a coulee or anything, but I can't even find anything that, of course, I found that my memory is not all that perfect.
I understand. I'm already there.
but I just and I've been out there several times just to walk around, and it's interesting country.
So Grandpa Red and Grandma Cleone got together because she had originally started here and then moved to Oregon, but she got to come back and live with her.
When she came back, she went to Dillon and got her teaching certificate.
Okay.
Which was the 2 year.
2 year, wasn't it?
2 year. 2
2
year
years,
certificate.
okay.
Yeah.
And she taught school at Nye,
Okay.
and then came back in the summers. Her and Auntie opened the candy kitchen. I think Ed Fellows was still alive at that time.
Yeah.
And that was where the bar is now, the Chrome Bar.
Okay.
And there was a little area in there that was partitioned off, and she worked there in the summer.
The candy kitchen, was it like just a
Well,
bakery type of thing?
Well,
or a,
that
I think
they sold ice cream and
light sandwiches. I don't know. I don't want to say there's hamburgers or anything quite like that, but I think that they you can go in there and get a sandwich and
Almost
have
a
an
deli
ice cream
kind of
cone.
style.
Pardon?
Like a deli almost kind of style.
Yeah, yeah. And see, back in those days, you know, I've got a map, an insurance map from 1927, where this insurance company, and I can't even think of the name of it now, would generate a map of the town, and I think there were 2 or 3 pool halls in those days. And then it, you know, and it showed the location of the cobblestone garage and the other garage
And the J apartment.
and of course the J Hotel and
And the
and
livery stable.
yeah, there was a couple of livery stables. There was a livery stable there where Dad's original hardware store was.
Right. So was Grandpa, so when he and Grandma got together, was he still on the ranch or was he in working at the hardware store?
When they got married, he was working wherever he could find a job. You know, those were tough times. And my impression is that Dad would like to have been a rancher. I mean, he loved.
Oh yeah, he always talked
He loved the
about that.
horses. I mean, he would walk a team of horses down, plow the garden.
Oh, really?
in Flanagan.
And sometimes just one horse.
Yeah, but you know, I can remember him riding on a harrow, pulled by 2 horses. As we pulled around
Where the shop is, the
where that
garage behind the little house.
Okay.
yeah.
That's
It's
where
just a
big garden plot was.
Big garden.
So he'd bring
And
the
I
horse
used
into
to hate
town,
going
but
out there and picking rocks.
out of the garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, when Dad and Mom got married, Dad was working at a job down in Boise, and she just went down to visit and came back married. I guess I don't know exactly how.
Oh,
Well,
so they didn't even get married here. They got
Oh,
married
no,
in
they
Boise.
got married in Boise,
Oh.
Idaho.
I think he was still here from what I understood. And she was there with a Girl Scout
Okay, that's
people.
something.
That's
yeah.
what I remember her telling me. And he came down there and said,
Let's get married.
if you don't marry me now, it's over.
He followed her on a Girl Scout trip to get married.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
yeah.
what my mother telling me.
Oh, that's
Okay,
funny.
I don't know why I have the impression that he was down there working. It just seems like that's what I
I don't
thought.
think he ever worked down there.
But Mother was big in Girl Scouts.
Yeah.
And in my baby book, I've got a picture of me on a blanket at the McKay cabin up on West Rosebud. And I went to a Boy Scout camp, a Girl Scout.
When you went to a Girl Scout
Yeah.
camp with your mom when you were a baby.
And now I've got pictures of someplace else of a bunch of people, girls who were in the Girl Scout at that cabin, at the McKay cabin. I think it's that McKay cabin is over on the West Rosebud thing, but McKay's owned the ranch went all the way from the bottom of a good part of the bottom of the West Rosebud all the way up over the mountain into Roscoe.
Yeah.
You know, and there was a cabin there, and it's down below the Allen grade, you know, quite a ways up, and I can remember going down the mountainside to that cabin and finding old copies of National Geographic in that old cabin, and I'm pretty sure that's the McKay cabin. But there must have been a road up the bottom of the the valley.
Yeah,
to that,
could have been.
So where did the hardware store come in? Did
Well, when
Grandpa own it, or just work for it, or what? What's the story?
he, I was trying to remember the name of the guy that he worked for, somebody that owned the.
Jim Hill.
No, it wasn't Jim. It was somebody else. Anyway, he worked for, that guy was a carpenter, contractor, and Dad went in with him and worked. God, I should be able to remember that name. And anyway, about that time, he hooked up with Preston Blakely, and it was
Who was
Blakely and Gaustad.
Blakely
a
and
brother-in-law?
Huh?
Was Blakely a brother-in-law?
No, he was married to. He was married. Blakely was married
double
to.
cousin.
Blakely was married to Clara Gaustad.
Okay.
Was a
The,
double
the
cousin.
youngest. The youngest.
Who was
the
Carl's daughter
Yeah.
the youngest.
Right.
The youngest
of the other family?
of the other family.
Okay.
and so it was Blakely and Gaustad, and it was a lumber yard and hardware store.
Oh, okay.
And
'Cause he was a contractor.
It was set up in an old
Livery stable.
livery stable that
Mm.
was across from the Rainier
Distributor.
uh, garage,
okay,
and
okay.
so forth.
So where is that now? What's their
That's a new building on Main Street,
that new one that they're just?
and they had it all covered up, and now there's finally windows and doors.
Yeah, we
in
just
the
walked.
front
Mom
of
and
it.
I just walked by there
Yeah,
last week. So that's where the hardware store was.
yeah,
That's
it
where
was
the
actually
lumberyard
the
was.
lumberyard
Lumber
was.
yard. Okay,
It wasn't
cool.
that building, it was a completely
Okay.
different.
Right.
And sometime, and the partnership didn't work well. Preston stayed in the store, and Dad went out and did installation. And Preston and his family thought that they ought to have all the money from the store. And so there was not a good how we're going to share
All
this
right.
thing.
There was not a good business plan in
Yeah.
place.
And so Dad
Bought him out.
bought him out.
Oh, okay.
I
And
still
then
got some stationaries, Blakely and Gaustad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Was there a story about a fire at the hardware store?
no,
No, the story of the fire is grandmother outside, I believe, the hardware store smoking.
Well, there was a,
That's what I was alluding to. Do you remember
Yeah.
that, Mom?
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you by
Well,
yourself?
No, and Freddie Udenberg with me.
there was a problem occurred when, see, Dad was right across from the Rainier,
The garage.
and Dad thought that they were good friends, and of course, even when I was working in the hardware store, people walked around, the owner walked around town from store to store, and they had soda pop and everything else across the street, and somehow Sam Rainier thought that Dad stole some money.
Cool.
Probably $200 or $300.
I never did hear an amount, but there was
Yeah. And I can remember Dad coming home being very upset that he
He was
just
being
could not
accused.
believe that this man would think that he had stolen the money. And that was never settled. I think Sam Rainier was not a sweet man. and I had suspected that there was contention about it. I suspect that Sam found out that Dad didn't do it, but never
Wasn't going to clear
anybody.
his name.
yeah.
So ultimately later Sam bought the building, That
No, he owned the building.
did he own it at the time?
He owned the building that the
I
hardware
think-
store was in?
I don't think he did own it until later. I think.
Well,
he,
that, he
I
could
re-
have bought it and then evicted that.
Oh,
yeah, I can remember when I learned that he had bought it, and Dad was pretty sure he was going to have to get out.
so Grandpa and Preston didn't own the building, they just had a business
No, it
there.
was owned by somebody who had
We had the livery
who
stable.
had been running the livery stable, and then at that time there were two liveries. There was this big one, and then a pretty good sized one south of the hotel. I'd say
I think
not
it's
exactly across from the
Well-
cobblestone garage, but
No, I think it's where the cafe was.
yeah, someplace right in there. Yeah,
Or is still a cafe.
and I've got some good, nice pictures of that, and that was owned by the Bryant family, and Mrs. Chitwood was a Bryant, and that was another one of the kind of founding families in the country.
So the building where the hardware store was got bought, and then they kicked Grandpa out.
Yeah. Now, do you remember where the hamburger hut was in
Mm-mm.
town?
Mm-mm.
Okay, the building.
It's an old building that's still there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just south of the First Interstate
It's a
Bank.
little
Okay.
shack.
Yeah, it's a little shack. That was
But
a
when
hamburger
he
hut.
when he lost the lease on the lumber yard, we had lumber piled in our front yard and
There was, you know,
And he
It-
moved his business into the
into
hamburger
this
shack?
hamburger hut, you know, and it was hardly big enough to serve hamburgers.
Oh, he had the store there?
Oh yes. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Not
that.
long. No, I mean it was only there 2 or 3 years maybe. Or
Yeah,
something.
maybe
That's a
a
while.
year even.
That sounds like a while for as small as it was.
Yeah, but then if you think about moving, and the hardware store was a heavy hardware store. It was nails and bolts
Yeah.
and
Paint
paint, and you know, I mean, he didn't sell
appliances.
appliances, you know.
But still.
But then he somehow got a lease on that the other place. Right
Lee
across-
Davidson,
Yeah,
and that's straight across from AEI building.
or the cobblestone garage.
Okay.
If you understand what that
It
is.
was that's the building. the
AEI was the
cobblestone-
cobblestone.
Oh,
garage.
so it's across the street
Across the
from.
Yeah.
street from the
across
cobblestone.
the street from that. Yeah.
And he was there for 10 or 15 years or more, right?
Something like that. yeah.
Until I don't know, 50.
Yeah, somewhere in the
Well, I've
50s.
I graduated in '53, and we were still in the Davidson house building, and then while I was in college, you moved down to that it had been a grocery store next to the drugstore, and it was owned by Harry Howland.
Yeah.
The hardware store moved again.
Yeah,
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So it was like in like at least 4 different locations.
yeah.
Oh boy.
And I think Dad wanted to get into the lumber business again, and he had thought he could rent that building behind
Behind the chrome bar.
the Chrome Bar.
Because
What
the
would he
same
do
guy.
if he had all your buildings now?
Well, he really liked the lumber business, you know.
Yeah.
And
I
he
can
had
understand that.
tried to make money during the war, but he couldn't get merchandise.
Yeah.
And I can remember during the Korean War, the way that the business worked then, there weren't big hardware
Outlets.
companies.
Or, yeah. Mhm. It was hard. So, it was
so-
harder. You'd have to
so,
piece
Out
together.
of Billings, there were 2 big wholesale hardware systems: Billings Hardware and Winter Hardware, and they would send salesman around, and we would keep a list of what we wanted, and they were ordered, and then they would be shipped out of the building. And I can remember during the Korean War, we needed some copper pipe, 3/4 inch,
Yeah,
soft. that you
soft
could
copper
turn.
for water lines.
Dad said, "I want a roll of that," and so the salesman says, "You can't have it unless you've got government approval to buy it for."
Oh.
Dad said, "Give me the paper, I'll sign it." And he did. And he said, "I went through that whole damn war, not being able to have merchandise, and if you're going to get me, you're going to get me." And I was kind of astounded that he would, and he just said, "Hey, and
Enough of
and
that.
he knew that other people had lied about getting merchandise, to get it to sell,
Yeah.
you know.
If you can't beat them,
It's
join them.
like any government activity, there's rules and regulations, and they only get enforced by the way they want 'em.
Yeah. So this whole time, when he was with the hardware store, Grandma was teaching?
No, altogether.
No?
No, she didn't start teaching until Sharon was
Oh.
in school.
Because she got her
No.
you said she got her teacher
a year
certificate.
before, because
So she didn't teach at all between the time she got her teaching certificate in Dillon and...
no,
Oh, okay.
she raised us kids. Except
Until I
Sharon.
was 5.
When
And then
Sharon
she
was
started
5,
teaching. Okay.
that's when Mother started working part-time at the school. And Sharon would go with Dad to the hardware store.
You get in trouble.
And sometimes up and down the street with all of her little friends.
Yep.
And sometimes at Auntie's.
Yeah.
But nobody knew for sure where.
Because she was the wild child.
Speaking of not knowing where Sharon is, do you remember when you got in trouble for reading comic books?
Yep.
Was that about that time? How old were you then?
I was older then. I was probably 10 or 12.
Were you over in
Well, we
Brant's
were...
place?
Huh?
Were you over in the Brant place or
I was at Weichels.
Michael's?
And I was down reading comic books when I was supposed to be having
Homework?
No, it was
No,
the
a
polio
shot,
vaccine.
Oh! You're supposed to be getting a polio vaccine?
yeah,
Oh.
polio
It was kind
vaccine.
of important.
And I missed it.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
And my mother cut a switch by the back door. And she whipped me.
All the way home.
And I figured out later she had good reason. She was worried about me getting polio because Peggy's couple of her siblings had it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
you
it
were
was,
in
that-
close proximity.
that was a scary time
Yeah.
yeah.
for polio scared everybody.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And there didn't seem to be any way to accommodate it. You know, I mean, it was.
Once you had it, it wasn't good.
Yeah, Sid Simonson had it after he was in the military, but he somehow lucked out and didn't have any long-term effects. But he didn't get to see any combat because of it.
It was hard to tell. It seemed like the younger you were, the better off you were. Although, and if you had been physically active during the time that it was coming, you were coming down with it, that you were much more likely to have
Problems.
permanent
Oh, really?
problems.
Well,
So you said Peggy's siblings had it?
yeah, a
Did-
couple of her brother and sister of
did-
hers.
Did they turn out all right? Did they?
Yeah. Yeah, they were
Yeah,
okay.
the the
Pick
effect
on
that,
you and you and you.
well,
the
the
rest of you go
effect that, and a lot of people had it and never knew it, you know,
Mm.
because it didn't
Didn't
progress
have
to the
bad
stage
effects.
that it became obvious, you know, and
So there was a polio epidemic going around in town, and Mom was reading comic books.
Yep.
Yeah.
and she didn't get the
The vaccine.
vaccine.
So
Yeah.
you didn't get it at all,
I think I got it later.
Yeah.
but you missed that turn.
Yeah, I missed
Yeah.
that too.
Was that
Yes.
back where it was the shot that would actually give you a scar, or they'd have the
No,
sugar
this
cubes by
was
that point?
drinking stuff.
Oh, it was liquid.
Yeah,
Oh.
the first was oral.
I
Yeah.
think that's what I had when I was a kid too.
Well,
was something they put
it
in
got,
the sugar
got to the
cube.
point where
Slightly-
they gave you both,
Yeah.
and then they would give you boosters.
Because I didn't get. Is that the one that gives you a scar, or is that something else?
Oh no, that's just smallpox.
That's smallpox.
Oh, is that what it
I never
was?
got that.
Oh, didn't you ever get a smallpox?
Huh.
Well, some people scarred pretty good, and other people didn't too.
I know Heather did.
And yeah, I know Heather did. I don't think I got the shot, but maybe I just didn't scar it. But I don't think I got the shot.
I don't know.
Seemed like there was a right about in there they quit giving it or something. I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah,
Well,
that could be too.
At one point, they finally. The last time I got one was when I went overseas. You know.
Yeah.
Okay, so while Mom was getting in trouble, and Grandma was teaching school, and Grandpa was at the hardware store, what were the rest of you guys doing?
Going to school, I guess.
Going to school? When did tell me about the milk cows? When and where did you have the milk cows?
We had them in the backyard.
Here, like right
Yeah.
next door here.
Where the garden is, or where
Okay.
the thing is. There was a big shed, garage type thing, and in one end of it was where we kept the cows in cold weather, and we picket them up and down the alley, and
Down the back street, you know.
yeah, any place where there was an alley or
How many
grass was
cows did
growing.
you have?
Well, at that time we just had one at a time.
Oh.
Mm.
Well, there were a couple there.
Was there two?
Yeah, at least
No,
two
could have
there.
been.
Now, growing up, there was a shed out there, and behind it was a outhouse. And then on one end of the shed was the chicken coop. And then the shed had the chicken coop, and then you've seen that
Clothesline.
clothesline. That was
Outdoor.
Chicken coop.
yeah. Initially, it had been
It was a chicken yard.
a part of the fox farm
Oh, really?
that was up here.
Went from foxes to chickens.
Yeah, you know,
Keep them in to keep them out.
yeah. It was up where Porter's place is, across from the place across from Karl's.
Hill.
No, here in town.
Oh, okay.
Just past the football field.
Oh, okay.
Across from the Howland place.
Okay.
And that was the fox farm. There had been a couple fox farms in town,
I don't remember.
and I've got a newspaper report on you know, it was lucrative. I think it was probably it was cold enough here that you encourage the foxes to.
You can grow a nice coat.
Yeah.
Huh? Why did I think that you had milk cows on the other side of town?
Well, later
We
we
did.
did.
You did later. Okay. Okay.
Down across the,
Like by your old house?
yeah.
No, that was Andy's house. That was Andy's.
That was
there.
Auntie's house? Okay.
Well,
That was
I
Andy's.
moved the house in,
Oh, okay.
From the
Oh,
line.
okay.
but there was a log house and a build-on thing there, and then just south of the house was an old house.
It's almost like a bunkhouse.
Yeah.
It was. Andy had a two-story house that she didn't use the top part of, and then there was this bunkhouse behind it,
Yeah.
and she had a chicken coop, and then Sheep Creek ran down behind it, and Sheep Creek is a creek that's been in town ever since they had town, and it comes out of the river up
On Lover's Lane.
Lover's Lane, and comes down through the back part of Carl's Howland place, comes all the way through town, and it has been kind of modified where it goes, because the ranchers north of town have co-opted it and used it to
Irrigation.
irrigate, and it's a ditch. I mean, it's actually a ditch that comes through town. You know, it's
Sheep
with
Creek.
the Kimball Heron or the
Yeah.
and back behind that whole area from Grove Street, all the way to School Street, was owned by a couple named Grieve,
Yeah.
and he was Canadian, and he was the pharmacist at the drugstore. An interesting old guy, and his wife was a bird of a cute little old lady. And she
Had a big garden.
had a big garden and did
Big
a lot
lawn.
of flowers, and he wasn't the original druggist in town. I think there was something called FIFO earlier, but he was a Canadian, but he had come down and and purchased the drugstore, and he was the druggist whenever we were growing up.
Yeah.
They had a fountain, you know, and it was a kind of a neat drugstore, you know. But Dad leased all that property, and so he then built a small add-on to that the shed down there. And
Yeah,
had-
it was a garage next to the cabin,
yeah,
and then we made it into a barn, and had the cows go in there and milk them.
How many cows did you have then?
I think at one time I had 5 or 6 in town.
Oh, really?
And were you out of high school at this point, or still in high school?
Still
You
in
were still
school.
in school.
I only remember 3 at the most, but
Yeah, there was.
Did you stay down there with Auntie then sometimes when you were?
No. Stayed at home, and later on the cabin, Seaburn stayed in there, and I stayed in there, and
we ran out of bedrooms,
yeah.
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 and so
Got a little crowded.
But Auntie was living down there.
Andy lived in the
Next door.
house.
In
Yeah,
a 2-story house, yeah.
I didn't realize. I don't think I'd ever heard that Annie lived down there. I just pictured you high school boys going in and living down on the other side of town so you could milk these cows.
yeah. I learned how to milk, but I worked in the store, and those stupid cows wanted to be milked every morning, every night.
I always said I was the smart one. That's one reason I always liked being the middle child, because Heather milked the cow. Mom must not have learned anything from you guys having to milk the cow all the time, because she was plumb fine with it for the most part. But Heather milked the cow, and by the time she kind of got sick of it and didn't want to anymore, then Russell wanted to learn, so I got left out. The only time I had to milk the cow was the one night that Heather and I got in trouble for coming home late, and Mom thought it was the perfect punishment. She had to milk the cow that night. I don't know if it was just on purpose or on accident. But we come home and we're like, "Sorry, we're late, Mom." She says, "Go milk the cow." And it was late. It was well after midnight. And so we go out to milk the cow, and I start, and Heather finally goes, "Get out of the way, you're taking forever." So
Yeah, if you don't know how, it takes a while.
yeah, so she finished milking the cow, so. Yeah, and my kids, Brady especially, he always wanted a milk cow. I said, there's no way I'm getting a milk cow. Because my mother milked a cow for 18 years and she was tied down. She never got to go anywhere. As soon as we'd get a hired man that was trained, enough to milk the cow, he'd quit.
You just gotta keep a couple bum calves around you. It's fine.
We did do that when I was in high school. We finally, that one year, we
Yeah.
had 7 bum calves and that worked pretty slick.
Now, isn't there a story about, I think, an old Model T having a bad radiator?
Was it a Model T?
Or
Just an old car or something.
Thought there was something about
I think I
having
remember
to
that you had to
drain
put
it
water
every
in
time.
Oh no,
Water
that
in
was
it
the
every time.
36 Chevy.
That was our 4 doors 36 Chevy, and somebody in our family wasn't smart enough, and that was when I had the cows down
The other side of town.
the other side of town, and I had to pour water in and drive down there and milk the cows and come home, and then I was late getting to a basketball game or practice, and I didn't drain the car.
Somehow we didn't have enough money to buy antifreeze.
Antifreeze. So you just
Or
were
it
using
was
straight
leaking
water,
or
so you'd have
something.
to
I can't remember
you'd
if
have to
it
put
leaked or
water in
whatever.
it and then drain it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it froze that night and cracked the block, and water came out. And then we drove that car, and that's what we should have been doing before. I'd drive it all the way up to Flanagan's without any water in it, because it wouldn't hold water. I'd go like hell and shut the key off and coast. Go like hell and shut the key off and coast. And I could drive 2.5-3 miles up to Flanagan's. And that's what I should have been doing in
the
town.
first place. Yeah, because you didn't need it to go that far.
No,
We had a buffalo robe that we put over the front of it, and I'm pretty sure it was a buffalo robe.
yeah.
I mean, it was a
But that was just to make it start better. That's when we had.
yeah
That was your head block heater?
Yeah.
yeah. And see,
Or put the current head in there.
it just made sense that was it was heavy and and
Insulated.
insulated, and I'm sure that there wasn't the only one in town,
Everybody had a buffalo robe.
I think it wasn't shaped like a I think that they had stitched it together to make it
Big enough and
square, but and we kept it covering. It used it like a canvas, for several things. It was heavy, as I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
heavy.
So you worked at the hardware store, and you milked the cows.
Yeah.
And with help occasionally. What did Mary and Sybil do?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, they worked in the house, mother.
My mom was running around town.
Right.
Well, mother was on the school board for a while before.
Yeah, and she
went to
did a
school.
lot of stuff.
And she was in.
Before she was teaching, or
Yeah,
after?
before.
Oh, she was on the school board before she taught. Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
And then the church was a big thing. She was involved with Sunday school.
Yeah, she was the head Sunday school teacher for a long time.
How many years did she teach?
27 years, I
Oh,
think.
really?
That was Nye and Absorkee.
Okay, so she did she teach in Nye some before she got married?
Yeah.
Okay, so she did teach a little bit before she got married.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she taught maybe 3 or 4 years
I
before
don't
she
know,
got
I
married.
don't know how long
Between
she taught up
Between
there.
Nye and
And then she got involved with the Girl Scouts, and then she
Right.
went to Idaho and got married.
And what year was it when Grandpa Red died?
61.
61.
And Grandpa Andy was living across the street? Is that right?
Not until later, I don't think. Do you? Was he
Can't
living there?
remember when he moved there.
Yeah, see, I was.
It wasn't too much.
I'd been in the military I'd been in Germany. And,
Yeah.
and I had And I was at Huntsville when he died. I was at Redstone Hospital
Yeah.
When Dad died.
when Dad died.
Yeah, I was working up in Lincoln, Montana.
Now, so
Yeah.
he got struck by lightning twice, and then he had several heart attacks before he died.
He had,
Does it
He-
make you wonder whether those lightning strikes had something to do with his heart?
well, actually, he was really sick when we were pretty young. And I think they thought he had sleeping sickness.
Mm.
But then,
I'm trying to think about when it was. Before I was out of high school, out of grade school, he had a cerebral hemorrhage,
Oh,
really bad. And that's what kind of got him for the rest of his life. He had headaches forever.
Mm.
And he swore up and down that was the same thing he'd had before. And when we get back kind of to the Marfan business, you know, Marfan is, and we've never been diagnosed, and of course, Marfan is like saying, you know, it's a symptom, you know, it isn't a disease. It's,
right.
It's,
A body type and
yeah, body type, and it seems to be associated with relaxation of the tissue as you grow older, you know, which then kind of equates to having this terrible aneurysm problem that Grandma Gaustad died with,
oh, okay.
Dad died with, Aunt Pearl had one. I think several other people. And as time progressed, they learned more about working with them. I think they knew that Grandma had one, and they could tell by feeling, you know, because it wasn't the one up above the aorta comes out of the heart, and then comes down and branches off and goes to your legs. Well, it's the problem that all of them people had was down here
Oh,
in the aorta, and just before it branches. And I think they could feel that with Grandma, and there wasn't anything they could do. They just waited till they burst,
right.
you know. And but then I think with Aunt Pearl, they actually did something to help her.
To treat it a little bit.
Yeah, and as time went on, they learned more about how to do it. And I was talking with Morrison. He has that problem.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that I think Mother kicked in some pretty good
Some good genes.
genes. 'Cause so far
Yeah.
we've had some problems, but there's some other things that are associated with it, and it's detached retina, and I think did you have that?
No, Sybil did.
Sybil did, yeah. Yeah.
That Duke's mixture was maybe a good thing then, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they've been checking all of us pretty much for all those things, and you know, see, Dad was 55 and Grandma was in her 60s. You know, it just
Or was she 70?
I don't think she was.
I'll have to look in the. Seems like.
I don't think so. I think she was 65 or something like that.
And Grandpa died with a stomach cancer,
Oh,
which
okay.
is not totally unassociated, because I've heard that this general condition, you have digestive problems, system problems and I've experienced that, and I've naturally passed it on to my son and
Sure.
grandson.
Why not?
What a guy.
Yeah.
Share.
Well, I obviously didn't pick the right.
Your mate's genes didn't
Yeah.
didn't dilute it down good enough.
Yeah.
Reminds me of Mom always told Heather and I, she said, I don't care who you marry, just marry a guy with good eyes and good teeth. 'Cause she and Dad both had bad eyes and bad teeth, and we all had glasses, and we all had braces.
Heidi did good.
I did. Heather did, well, Heather did marry a guy with, well, he doesn't have any teeth anymore.
Just that.
So I guess maybe his teeth weren't so good.
Yeah.
We thought she did good, but maybe not so much.
He also
Yeah.
tried to lose his thumb.
Oh yeah,
you
he's
did
short
better.
a few appendages.
Oh, did he actually lose some? I thought they managed.
They're
to
just
put it-
short.
Ah.
They're just a little short. That's alright.
What are a little short?
Gus's fingers.
Oh,
That might not be. Well, it might be genetic.
could be.
That's not a finger defect.
No, that's a brain defect.
Well, this has been quite a discussion.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I was wanting to hear some of the old stories that I've heard before, and I learned a lot more. We went back pretty far. That was pretty good. A little genealogy lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, might have to do it again.
Yeah.
But I think that's about enough.
You tired, Mom?
Yeah.
Hey, my lazy boy is calling.
I
Yeah.
was just gonna say.
Carl's-
I was just
Carl's
gonna say.
lazy
The lazy
boy
boy
is
is calling. Understandable.
Well,
Isn't it?
I'm
I
trying
took
to
the class 'cause I'm
gather
loud.
some of this genealogy, and Mary sent the pictures back that she had,
Yeah.
and I'm going to try and organize
And
them.
she had some arrowheads.
Oh, she
She
took-
glommed on to whatever she could.
She took all that stuff that she could find, and she sent some of them back, and then I left them sitting around, and I don't know what happened to them.
Oh.
The ones, there were several of them that were standard arrowheads that had been the tip broken off, and I think Indian just threw them down because the one that I was most interested in was the one I found out on, and I'm still looking for that place out there because I mean it's just in my head.
It's in your mind, and you
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. There's the bush here, and
Doesn't mean they're still there.
but I can't, you know.
But the arrowheads are gone.
Well, the
You never know. Might be some more.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting country out there. I don't really know. You know, I can remember one time Dad asked. You know, we played on the hills.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Is that buffalo skeleton still up that coulee?"
Really.
And I think it was the one we were talking about, the one between the A hill and
Oh, where the water tank
the
is.
water tank is. And you know, since then I've learned how to come across the hill. You know, I've driven across several times. You know, and thinking he must have walked to Absorkee several times. You know, because I've got a picture of him that high, and I think it must have been taken out on the monkey ranch.
Could be.
And see, he was born in 1906, and they moved to Absorkee. When they moved, they sold that in 21. So he was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't stay on your ranch all the time.
Yep.
And in those days, you wouldn't walk down the road to get here when you could
Cut across,
get
yeah.
across, and that isn't very far when you got long legs. You know,
Yeah. And he did have long. Does anybody know for sure how tall Grandpa was?
6'4", what do you always
That's
say.
what I thought. I had heard 6'4". So people will talk about our kids and how tall they are, and they say, well, you know, they must get that their dad's tall, right? And I said, yeah, their dad's tall, but I'm taking credit for the height of
Yeah.
my family because
You
We're all
certainly
still
didn't hurt
technically blonde, it's
you
fine.
You didn't hurt the.
no, I didn't hurt the gene pool any, did I?
In one trait.
And I've got some of the pictures that Mary sent that are obviously picture of him, and in one of them, I mean, he's got on like bib overalls, and his legs are sticking out, and I think he's sitting on a cow, you know, but he's almost like he's got his feet on the ground, you know, and he was like me, you know, when I was 150 pounds until I was almost in my 40s.
Oh, yeah.
I was not.
Yeah.
No,
I was not a.
not a big guy.
Not
String bean.
I was.
Because how tall are you, Uncle Pete?
I always said 6'2". but I was a beanpole.
Yep.
You know. And I think he was too. I've got a couple pictures of him with Mother when they were courting, I think, and he was skinny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I think he was pretty powerful too, because he always said, I could do this work of 3 men, and I did. And he wouldn't let Karl work for a lot of people.
Yeah, because Dad thought some of the
figured some
people
of
he
his
worked
health
for
problems
had
because he was
overworked him.
Because he worked too hard.
abused his body when he was younger,
Yeah.
and he knew what the farmers would do.
Yeah.
They work you like slaves.
Yeah. Well, like they had balers then where you needed 2 or 3 people, but he could reach across.
Wow.
And they didn't work 8 hours a day. Of course, that's all you guys work is 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I was kind of a hellion,
You were a hellion?
yeah, and my cousin Tom Flanagan, we were doing things and running around and getting in trouble or whatever, and he grabbed a hold of me one time, lifted me right
Your
up
dad
off
did?
the ground. Yeah. He says, "You can't do that to my sister." Yeah, see,
Don't be getting her kids in trouble or getting them hurt.
yeah.
Well, why don't you tell them about what you and Tommy used to do?
We had it set up, driving up and down the road. We'd flash our lights, and both he'd flash and I'd flash, and we'd switch lanes and go.
Boy.
Now that's not something we were trying to teach you.
Don't
But can you imagine
You
40,
run those disclaimers
40 miles an
across the
hour,
bottom
2
of this.
cars coming,
And that was your signal. You signaled to each other that it was time to switch lanes.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And Tom was all for it, and I finally told him, I says, "We got to quit doing that. Something's going to happen, and we just can't do that anymore." But we used to do that.
Someone's gonna come behind you and go, "What the hell?"
Yeah, what the hell? That's what we were looking for, is to scare somebody
Yeah,
else.
yeah. Kind of an interesting way to play chicken.
and if you know Tom, he was willing to do that, something like that. Anyway.
He was ready to do anything.
Okay, now who are all the name off the Flanagans for me? Because I always forget who's.
John, Tom, Mick, and Joe.
Okay, 4 boys. Were there any girls?
No.
No.
And see, there were the same kind of families. Not even, I don't think they were married the same way, but there was a John and a Tom Flanagan.
In the generation above, or
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. You people and your names, yeah. Y'all need to start picking some new ones.
Yeah.
Peters and Carls and Marys and Sybil's.
And see,
There's a lot of
the original John Flanagan homestead is where Joe is now.
Oh,
So is Joe the only one left?
Yeah.
I don't think I ever knew Tom.
Yeah.
probably not.
I remember John Jay.
He was about the same age as Sybil.
Okay.
They were classmates.
Tom, yeah.
And he was willing to do almost anything.
Oh, yeah. He-
Was he the oldest?
No,
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 second.
middle, second,
Okay.
second.
He'd wreck down how many cars, get drunk and go like hell.
Ugh. He was the wild child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when he and I got together, there was shit to
It
happen.
was never good. Or a lot of fun, depending
Yeah.
on which way you look at
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, he had been badly injured. He was chasing a horse, and the horse caught him.
Oh,
Yeah.
They thought they were going to lose him.
ooh.
I don't think that contributed a whole lot toward his.
I think it had that in him before that.
It didn't change his personality a
No.
whole lot, but it scared the whack out of
He was fairly
him.
young when that
He
happened.
was just chasing a horse, and
In the corral or the pasture. Or
well,
whatever.
yeah, kind of across the creek there by the house, and the horse just decided to give him one, and they can do that, on
Yeah.
the fly.
Oh, I've seen him kick sideways.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah,
They're pretty agile when they want to be.
I didn't do much horse riding, but I remember riding one time, and there was one alongside, and all at once thump right behind my leg,
That's right. You have never been a real fan of horses, right?
Well, I can't remember how old I was, but we went up to Aunt Margin, Uncle Louie's place,
Yeah.
and that was when they were down on the Holt's place. And Patsy put me up behind this dryland horse, and we went up on the hill to get the cows. And about the time we got up on top, I was riding behind her. The horse, Jackrabbit, popped up and dumped both of us.
My horse
She got
just
the
about
horse.
did that
She
the
got
other
the
day.
horse, and got him back there, and got me up behind, and away he went again. And I walked home. And that was the horse that they called it a dryland horse. It had never been associated with
Was
a
that
creek.
paint?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Uncle Louie tried to get him to go across the creek one time. I mean, that deep. And they were not going to do that. Water is what you drink out of a
We don't walk in it.
stock tank.
We didn't even want to drink out of the creek.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I guess I've never thought that horses were particularly bright, but and I think you do all right if you got one that you got a general agreement with.
That is a fact. That is a fact. Talk about the rabbit, though. I actually just this fall we were moving some cows, and my horse is she's 10 years old now, and she's pretty calm for the most part. But a jackrabbit jumped out, and usually she, I don't know, for some reason she decided to spook, and I did stay on, but I was relaxed enough that I almost didn't. I was like, I would have felt really stupid if I'd have gotten dumped because of the stupid jackrabbit.
Yeah.
So your wild friends hanging out when you were a kid were Tom Flanagan?
Yeah. And there was a couple others, Bill Birkland and his brother Bob, and I can't remember who else. But we used to, I had that 37 Chevy half-ton pickup that I bought from the Flanagans when they got a newer, bigger one. And the Birklands had a Model A car, and we used to take off across the hills out Beaver Creek and cross and come out on the Red and Bow Hill. And it was...
See, in those days you could go any place. I mean,
nobody...
just leave the fences, leave the gates the way you found them, and
Yeah.
nobody got worried. It's just a shame.
And I
It really
remember
is.
one time, I don't remember who was with me, but we were driving And then we had a big snow that year. Hell, it must have been 2 feet deep. And I was driving up past towards the mine, and here's this school bus coming back down the road, and he wasn't gonna go in the ditch, and I went in the ditch, and he says, I knew I could pull you out, but I didn't think you could pull me out.
So he got you out anyway.
Oh yeah, got me out, yeah. But I used to chain it, put chains on the back and tear up the hillside or the roads with the.
Well, Uncle Johnny drove it every place. Anyway, it had been trained to live in the hills.
It knew its way around. So who did you hang out with growing up?
Oh, my classmates mostly, I guess. You know.
Because did you have cousins that were close to your age?
No,
Just the
Morris is-
Flanagans.
Morris is the closest, and I never trusted him for anything. I got him one time. I'd done something, and he chased me around the corner of the school building, grade school building, and somehow I got his thumb. And I had him for a while, but I didn't know what to do about it. That didn't turn out too well.
Kind of like a tiger by the tail.
He was a good bit bigger than
Yeah,
the
he's
rest of us.
Good sized guy.
But I remember I had him under control, but
What do I do when I let go?
And how long is he gonna let me hang on to this?
but I had him squirming, but and I can't remember why I'd done something and then run, and he caught me just going around the corner.
But Morris and his brother Bill were both good athletes, and their cousin Harold,
Yeah.
everybody got to calling him Buck. I never could do that, but
That was Jim Gaustad's boy, the only boy in
And the other cousin.
side.
and he set some records in Bozeman,
Oh really?
for athletics stuff.
Yeah, he could jump, high jump, and then he played basketball for Montana State College.
Oh really?
Yeah,
And this was a Gaustad or a Blakely?
Gaustad.
Gaustad.
Yeah,
So I do hear about other Gaustads around the state once in a while, and I always wonder.
Yeah, well, we hear about more of them now, but in those days it was the only,
Yeah,
only
that was
family
it.
that we knew about. There,
because one of Morris's daughters married a Gaustad.
is that right?
Oh really?
Yeah,
Oh,
and there was
funny.
no relation,
Oh
as
funny.
near as we could tell, and we didn't get into that very much
Yeah.
to find out who they were.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think
I think I'm
we've got
right
some
when
we've got some indication of the family now that we know that Bible, I think, was Grandma's.
It might have been Grandma's. I
Yeah.
thought it was Mother's.
So
Well, I
did
think Mother grabbed it. But
did the original Peter and Karl Gaustad, were they born here or did they come?
They were born in the United States, but I don't know where.
Okay.
But Grandma
Minnesota.
and Grandma and Aunt Tora were born in Norway,
In Norway, Mary and
Yeah.
Tora were. Okay.
and that Bible's got a whole bunch of Gaustads I've never heard of on the front page.
Yeah.
You know, and then I think I'm looking at. I think Grandpa was the oldest, and I'm going to try and copy it. I can hardly read some of it. And I can't remember what the name for Grandpa is, but it isn't Peter J. It's JP.
Mm.
for his name. And then there's Karl, and there are probably 5 children, you know, that with the dates of their birth.
And
That
then
are-
there were some half
Yeah,
siblings.
yeah. But I don't. But on this page, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that somehow Grandpa was left with the family somehow, because you know, in those days, one of the ways that women died was childbirth, you know, and if you had 5 or 6 children, the age your luck finally runs
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
You know, I mean.
The odds are against you.
Yeah, I mean, just from wear and tear, well, but I had the impression that he was kind of the head of the family.
So maybe his mother died when.
Yeah, somehow, whether he got to be the head of the family from her dying or his father dying, you know, but he was old enough then that he was
older
looked
than the rest
upon
of his siblings.
as somebody that and there's several pictures of Peter and Karl with Julius, who is I think the youngest of the family in that.
It could be.
And then I think there were some other connections where the father might have married somebody else, you know,
So there's some half
and
siblings.
so raised a bunch of children that weren't Gaustad's, you know.
Right.
And then there's some other reference material that we've got that the name of the family changed to reflect the ranch they were on.
Oh,
You know, when they
like the monkey ranch?
yeah, but I mean,
We could have been the monkey family.
Could be.
but somehow when the head of the family got the responsibility for running the ranch, then the names of the people changed. And then there's some indication that they have names like, you know, Peterson or Peter Dotterson, Peter Dotterson, Peter, you know,
Yeah,
the
I've heard a lot of
you
the
know, so
Andy Anderson.
So the girl wasn't going to keep her
Peter
name
Thompson.
anyway. So for a while she had the name Oli daughter, you know, which is, you know, not the way we do things, but you know, could have been.
Yeah,
the way
but that's
they
why there are no only daughters.
did. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not a last name you hear
Yeah,
because it was going to change
goes away.
to Anderson or
Yeah.
Thompson or.
Yeah. So that, you know, I haven't seen anything written that way, but I'm noticing that like it's the name then DTR daughter.
Oh, okay.